Yesterday, or rather last night, around midnight, after sleeping most of the afternoon and early evening, or today, around midnight, I woke up and there was this transaction, or rather this sequence going on, something that I've known for a while, or at least is in the background, which is that in the 2008 election season, that there were people that ended up going to Washington, D.C. that didn't actually win, that there was actually election hacking in 2008. And among that was congressional races in certain areas of the country, including congressional races that featured third party candidates, and that the third party candidates actually won. But there was some form of election misrepresentation that when the results were actually reported, it was fabricated to reveal that other people had won that hadn't, including incumbents, and including incumbents that were at that time in the Democratic Party. Now, here's the thing, I wasn't the candidate at the time. I worked on a congressional campaign for a candidate that I understand actually did win. And at some point after that, it was confirmed that he had won. And there may well have been some sort of settlement. There may have been some sort of agreement or some sort of resolution. But here's the thing, I was a member of that candidate's congressional staff. And I wrote press releases and I assisted with writing questionnaires. And my understanding is that I was retaliated against personally for assisting on that campaign in a manner that completely disappeared my life prior to my involvement in that campaign. Now, there's all kinds of other things connected to the specific elements of why it was allowed to be that I personally was to be politically disappeared and then completely overwritten and recharacterized in a way that was not anything relevant even to what my life was or could have been. But this has been something that I've understood for 2 years. And on some level, people have confirmed. And the ironic thing is, elements of that campaign and that campaign season showed up in other people's campaigns. And there are people around my age and with a comparable political background to me, to be honest with you, that they ended up getting into Congress. And they ended up getting into Congress on options set up in connection with their campaigns, with the campaigns from 2008. And it's really crushing because these people do not acknowledge political issues associated with people like me. That their political capital is predicated upon the expropriation of political capital of people like me and people like him and people like that community. And that community has been disappeared as well. That they don't have even the same kind of relationship with the communities that they were running in at the time because of the manner of re-engineering that has happened, including re-engineering that happened that allowed for their entire political legacies to be dispossessed of them and recirculated them to someone else. Now, I know that demographic representation is important, and for some reason, in the last couple of years, I was supposed to take responsibility somehow for white supremacy. And I've done what I can, right? In that regard. I've done what I can, especially with an understanding that insofar as we've been in a period of time when a lot of different cultures and a lot of different ways of being were coming into what should have been an inheritance, that also involves a kind of multifaceted understanding of the context from whence we come. And so there is dissent within all kinds of different communities throughout history. And it's ironic because before I was sent to San Francisco, and then before I was supposed to take responsibility for white supremacy, I was the minority white person in most of the milieus I was in. And I didn't have a problem with that. And I didn't have a problem being in service. But at some point in time, I was supposed to be put into another circulation, right? And that's where I am now. So that's why I gotta say that it has just come to my attention, a specific kind of correlation that actually needs to be addressed. I am not going to be kicked out on the street, and I am not going to be put through a false eviction proceeding. Why? Because of fake bail bonds, including a fake bail bond that would seek to code me to a criminal trespass in a state where the code for a trespassing on a nuclear facility is a 420. You guys have been hedging 420 on me ever since I was A, supposed to take responsibility for white supremacy, and B, everything about my political capital history ended up getting offloaded to be recirculated to other people, along with the political capital of people I used to be involved with, including, from what I understand, has been confirmed, somebody that actually did get elected and was just disappeared. And for whatever reasons, he made the decision he made. But guess what? The rest of the people that worked on that campaign, what happened to us? Because you just left me hanging. This isn't about him. You're the ones that decided you were going to accept the office based upon that kind of a legacy. It's on you now. Apparently, on April 7th of 2016, the state of Arizona passed a law that required journalists to submit to a background check, including a criminal background check, if they wanted to participate in being a part of media at formal state functions, i.e., you're part of the media pool or you're part of the media at a legislative session or at a major event, including one where a new legislation was being signed by the governor. April 7th of 2016, apparently, according to Mother Jones magazine, that was the specific day. Then it wants to say in July, in the beginning of July, that servers connected to the Democratic National Committee from the states of Illinois and Arizona started getting hacked. Illinois is where, in April of 2016, I personally, while I was homeless, went to a homeless service provider, a nonprofit, that I used to work with when I was a journalist. When I was a journalist and newspaper editor, we used to feature articles connected to their activities all the time. But this time I was homeless. And I went to talk to them, and they said that if I wanted to help, there was a protest of a major opposition party fundraiser, a Republican. And they were trying to get somebody the people, the Republicans, to support this tax measure they were trying to put through the state. And if I was willing to get arrested as part of the protest, they would pay for the bail bond. I thought to myself, I'm a homeless woman. What sense does it make putting myself into a situation where I'm going to get arrested? But now it sounds like a setup. It sounds like, and I understood it very shortly thereafter, is just that. We said you needed to go get arrested, so we have a bond on you. And when you refused, guess what? I was homeless again. I was homeless again based upon something that allegedly happened on my birthday when I was out of town. And not only that, the day that they told me, the official day of the incident that justified my expulsion, was a day that the IRS was shutting down accounts associated with the Episcopal Royalty Trust. They've disappeared that information since then. For 2 years afterward, that was the information that was publicly accessible. You guys allowed for them to close down a tax haven, and you expelled me in order to get the difference. You expelled me, and I filed reports because I refused to get a bail bond while I was homeless at a protest over a tax bill. At the same time, it now is evident that the Moscow City Council was also passing tax bills. Yeah, who are the Russian hackers? Who are the actual Russians? See, it's one thing if you're in city administration, including a city that's trying to negotiate with the state for resources, and you need to deal with tax policy. And you understand that the kind of tax policy you're dealing with is comparable to the kind of tax policy people in other cities and other countries are dealing with. It's completely ridiculous to set somebody up to be a mule and threaten them if they don't agree to knowingly do something, understanding it's illegal. And there's a threat that there's a very high likelihood they're going to get arrested. And then in the course of getting arrested, they're going to be bonded. And that bond is going to be held by a nonprofit organization. Were you agreeing to hold a bond on me as a nonprofit organization because you were in portfolio with that trust? Were you hoping if you held the bond on me that when that trust had or that account got shut down, you would get whatever had already been set up on charity? Because now we're a couple of years down the road, and somewhere in another country, there's another guy who had a history of being involved with print media, of dealing with real estate, of understanding high-level deals involving city contracting, and timber interests, including timber interests that transcend the national boundaries of the country of concern and intersect with a nonprofit organization. right? And he's in jail right now. Who holds the bonds on Alexei Navalny? Who holds the bonds on everybody from his organization and his network that have been arrested or been required to get medical treatment? Who pays for their insurance bills or for their medical treatment? It just so happens that exactly 2 months after that law was passed in Arizona, around the time, allegedly, it's being reported in the timeline of Russian hacking that DNC servers or DNC operations in Arizona and Illinois were being hacked. Exactly 2 months after that bill was passed, 5 police officers in Dallas, Texas were shot to death. My relationship with the police and with the Chicago pension systems hasn't been the same since, right? You had to make sure I was re-upped exactly 7 years after you first brokered on me being admitted for medical treatment as part of a pension scheme that was going into effect the same day. See, it's one of these things where I don't really understand what the motivation is, right? But it's really that calamitous. I can't appeal to you. I can't ask you to have a consideration for me as somebody that might have been worthy. I have to kind of accept that regardless of whatever I did that was of value, and that whatever I had to offer that was sincere and could actually have worked to your advantage, whether you're in Chicago or San Francisco or Houston or Austin or Fort Worth or in Dallas or Santa Cruz, it just doesn't really seem to matter that I could have offered that. It's kind of a strange thing. What are the rest of us supposed to do? You guys thought you were qualified to be politically active. You thought you were qualified to be some kind of political leadership. What do you do besides set other people up to get busted for stuff they didn't even do? I'm really having a hard time figuring this out. It's happened too many times. How many other people do you do this to? How many other people have you disappeared in your own midst? For what? They won't even let me pay taxes on income. They won't even let me pay taxes. Is that what you wanted? Did you want to double the punishment by making sure I couldn't even be credited or acknowledged for paying taxes so that then you could say I was a tax evader? Is that the kind of insurance you need now? That's different than the insurance you needed 5.5 years ago? Whatever you guys in Chicago are doing today that is preparing for tomorrow, I wish you luck. But I also hope that you cease and desist this immediately. You had a duty to get back to me after all this time of anything that happened up until now. Your toxic swap deals are done, guys. They literally did another chemical dump in the fucking Gulf of Mexico. They literally dumped more oil in the Gulf of fucking Mexico while you guys played these games. You're just as responsible as they are.